By degrees he disposed of the whole cargo, and when the division was made, it came to about £200 a man, and having reserved 40 shares to himself, his dividend amounted to about £8,000 sterling. The Indians along the coast came on board and trafficked with all freedom, and he punctually performed his bargains, till about the time he was ready to sail, and then, thinking he should have no further occasion for them, he made no scruple of taking their goods and setting them on shore without any payment in money or goods, which they little expected, for as they had been used to deal with pirates, they always found them men of honour in the way of trade, a people, enemies to deceit, and that scorned to rob but in their own way. Kidd put some of his men on board the Queda, merchant, and with this ship and his own sailed for Madagascar. As soon as he was arrived and had cast anchor, there came on board of him a canoe, in which were several Englishmen, who had formerly been well acquainted with Kidd. As soon as they saw him they saluted him, and told him they were informed he was come to take them and hang them, which would be a little unkind in such old acquaintances. Kidd soon dissipated their doubts by swearing he had no such design, and that he was now in every respect their brother, and just as bad as they, and, calling for a cup of bamboo, drank their captain's health. These men belonged to a pirate ship called the Resolution, formerly the Mocco, merchant, whereof one Captain Culliford was commander, and which lay at an anchor not far from them. Kidd went on board with them, promising them his friendship and assistance, and Culliford in his turn came on board of Kidd, and Kidd, to testify his sincerity in iniquity, finding Culliford in want of some necessaries, made him a present of an anchor and some guns, to fit him out for sea again. The Adventure galley was now so old and leaky that they were forced to keep 2 pumps continually going, wherefore Kidd shifted all the guns and tackle out of her into the Queda, merchant, intending her for his man of war, and as he had divided the money before, he now made a division of the remainder of the cargo. Soon after which the greatest part of the company left him, some going on board Captain Culliford, and others absconding in the country, so that he had not above 40 men left. He put to sea, and happened to touch at Amboyna, one of the Dutch Spice Islands, where he was told that the news of his actions had reached England, and that he was there declared a pirate. The truth of it is, his piracies so alarmed our merchants, that some motions were made in Parliament to inquire into the commission that was given him, and the persons who fitted him out. These proceedings seemed to lean a little hard upon the Lord Bellamont, who thought himself so much touched thereby that he published a justification of himself in a pamphlet after Kidd's execution. In the meantime it was thought advisable, in order to stop the course of these piracies, to publish a proclamation, offering the king's free pardon to all such pirates as should voluntarily surrender themselves, whatever piracies they had been guilty of at any time, before the last day of April, 1699. That is to say, for all piracies committed eastward of the Cape of Good Hope, to the longitude and meridian of Socotora and Cape Cameron, in which proclamation Avery and Kidd were accepted by name. Footnote: Avery was called the King of the Pirates. See the Daughter of the Great Mogul. End footnote. When Kidd left Amboyna he knew nothing of this proclamation, for certainly, had he had notice of his being accepted in it, he would not have been so infatuated to run himself into the very jaws of danger, but relying upon his interest with the Lord Bellamont, and fancying that a French pass or two he found on board some of the ships he took would serve to countenance the matter, and that part of the booty he got would gain him new friends, I say all these things made him flatter himself that all would be hushed, and that justice would but wink at him. Wherefore he sailed directly for New York, where he was no sooner arrived, but by the Lord Bellamont's orders he was secured with all his papers and effects. Many of his fellow adventurers, who had forsook him at Madagascar, came over from thence passengers, some to New England and some to Jersey, where, hearing of the king's proclamation for pardoning of pirates, they surrendered themselves to the governor of those places. At first they were admitted to bail, but soon after were laid in strict confinement, where they were kept for some time, till an opportunity happened of sending them with their captain over to England to be tried. Accordingly, a sessions of admiralty being held at the Old Bailey in May 1701, Captain Kidd, Nicholas Churchill, James Howe, Robert Lumley, William Jenkins, Gabriel Loff, Hugh Perrot, Richard Barleycorn, Abel Owens, and Darby Mullins were arraigned for piracy and robbery on the high seas, and all found guilty except 3. These were Robert Lumley, William Jenkins, and Richard Barleycorn, who, proving themselves to be apprentices to some of the officers of the ship, and producing their indentures in court, were acquitted. The 3 above mentioned, though they were proved to be concerned in taking and sharing the ship and goods mentioned in the indictment, yet, as the gentleman of the long robe rightly distinguished, there was a great difference between their circumstances and the rest, for there must go an intention of the mind and a freedom of the will to the committing an act of felony or piracy. A pirate is not to be understood to be under constraint, but a free agent, for in this case the bare act will not make a man guilty, unless the will make it so. Kidd was tried upon an indictment of murder also, viz. for killing Moore, the gunner, and found guilty of the same. As to Captain Kidd's defence, he insisted much upon his own innocence and the villainy of his men. He said he went out in a laudable employment, and had no occasion, being then in good circumstances, to go a-pirating, that the men often mutinied against him, and did as they pleased, that he was threatened to be shot in his cabin, and that 95 left him at one time, and set fire to his boat, so that he was disabled from bringing his ship home, or the prizes he took, to have them regularly condemned, which he said were taken by virtue of a commission under the broad seal, they having French passes. The captain called one Colonel Hewson to his reputation, who gave him an extraordinary character, and declared to the court that he had served under his command, and been in 2 engagements with him against the French, in which he fought as well as any man he ever saw, that there were only Kidd's ship and his own against Monsieur Ducasse, who commanded a squadron of 6 sail, and they got the better of him. But this being several years before the facts mentioned in the indictments were committed, proved of no matter of service to the prisoner on his trial. As to the friendship shown to Culliford, a notorious pirate, Kidd denied, and said he intended to have taken him, but his men, being a parcel of rogues and villains, refused to stand by him, and several of them ran away from his ship to the said pirate. But the evidence being full and particular against him, he was found guilty as before mentioned. When Kidd was asked what he had to say why sentence should not pass against him, he answered that, quote, he had nothing to say, but that he had been sworn against by perjured, wicked people, unquote. And when sentence was pronounced, he said, quote, my lord, it is a very hard sentence. For my part, I am the innocentest man of them all, only I have been sworn against by perjured persons, unquote. Wherefore, about a week after, Captain Kidd, Nicholas Churchill, James Howe, Gabriel Loff, Hugh Perrot, Abel Owen, and Darby Mullins were executed at Execution Dock, and afterwards hung up in chains at some distance from each other down the river, where their bodies hung exposed for many years. End of Section 10. Recording by Tysto, tysto.com.